Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to the second channel video. Right now is a crazy time to be a European, something which I'm sure has not escaped Ukraine, who are currently going through some pretty serious things. Maybe you've heard about them in the news, but Ukraine is looking to maybe join the European Union as a solution to some of their problems. In fact, they're not just looking to maybe join the European Union. If you look, they've actually signed an agreement to fast-track join the EU. And it's not just the president, it's not just the prime minister, it's the Speaker of the House as well. All of the major Ukrainian political figures have said, yes, please let us into the EU as fast as you humanly can, and then you might assume, okay, well that's going to be a hard application to get through, except actually, if you look, the governments of the Baltic states, as well as a number of other countries including Greece, so the Baltic states being Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, as well as Greece and other countries, are saying that, yeah, this is a good idea, let's let Ukraine join the European Union. Even Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, if you don't know EU politics, it's the closest thing to a prime minister or president the EU has, she said that we want them in the European Union. So the EU and the European Commission wants them to join, the EU member states want them to join, and they themselves are saying, please let us join. And so you might be saying, wow, that's going to happen so fast then, except actually the weird thing about country expansions, or even supranational federations that are kind of like countries but not in the case of the EU expansions, it's always going to be something that takes a little bit of time. And even though there is every single intent from everyone involved to fast track this, why is it that that is unlikely to happen? Why is it that the EU 27, which already is made up of a ton of weird exceptions and non-exceptions like this, but why is it that it's not going to include Ukraine, at least not immediately too soon? And we could go through this one by one, but I think the simplest thing to say, if we ignore the whole like, well, culturally it's very hard to integrate a country, the only real way to skip the whole process of dealing with culture and economics and the political systems is just to invade and annex, like Russia did with Crimea. But given that that's the whole thing causing this problem, we'll rule that off the table. Let's rule off sending EU troops into Ukraine to secure the borders and add it to their, to their federation. So instead we'll say, why can't they do it otherwise? Well, step one is the fact that right now, sadly, in fact, again, is very much the issue. A lot of Ukrainian territory is not controlled by Ukraine. Ignoring the Crimea, which is again, has been de facto under Russian control for about 8 years now. If we ignore, Crimea, you can see that a huge amount of Ukrainian territory is not under Ukrainian control. Why is this a big deal? Well, you kind of need to be in control of your borders for a country to function. I mean, ignoring the fact that just logistically you would probably not want to add a country to your union that doesn't have clear defined borders. There's also the issue of just like, well, if you look at the Copenhagen criteria, which is the general rules considered to join the EU, you need to have a bunch of basic things, but one of those is a functioning market economy. You need to be able to deal with the competitive pressure and market forces, as well as having rule of law, democracy, human rights, etc. And first of all, can you guarantee rule of law in these places you don't control? Can you guarantee democracy? The answer is actually no. Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk have not been able to participate in Ukrainian elections for the last few years because of their very interesting status. And so, okay, can you guarantee any of those criteria? Not very easily in reality, right? So, we'll say that just for now, imagine they get their country back tomorrow, that Russia just goes, oh wow, we made a wrong turn, so sorry about that, we didn't realize we were in Ukrainian territory, we were dealing with something else entirely. If they say that, they turn back, I mean, it'd be pretty wild because, again, there's a lot of areas they've got to turn back from. Then how about then? Could Ukraine join tomorrow? Were the war to stop tomorrow? And the answer to that is like, ooh, well, the problem is, one of the Copenhagen criteria, you might have noticed, dealing with competitive pressure and market forces from within the union is something that Ukraine might struggle with. Because if you look at, this is a map from 2023, Wait, in 2023? Oh, it's from 2018. This is a map showing the GDP in purchasing power parity per capita. So it's equalized to function regarding countries' prices in the country. You can see that like most of the European Union is on roughly the same foot. There's always going to be Portugal, which is living in Eastern Europe despite being Western Europe. But you can see that like, okay, looking around Europe and the EU in particular, most countries have this like 40 to 60,000 number. Interestingly enough, even 40,000 to 60,000 is enough that there is still a large wave of migration from countries like Poland to countries like Germany or like Norway or to Sweden or Ireland, because obviously you look at that and it's like, well, why wouldn't you go somewhere where the people are on average double as wealthy, where the work pays double as much? It's a real problem to have even a gap this big between countries. In fact, the last expansion of the European Union, or the last major one, where 10 countries joined all at once, including, by the way, 3 former Soviet Union countries and 4 countries that were part of the the Warsaw Pact. But when that happened, there were huge issues. Again, like a lot of countries had to impose restrictions within the European Union, and the countries that didn't, like Sweden and the United Kingdom. In fact, according to this random citation on Wikipedia, this decision not to imply migrant controls has led to a rise in anti-migrant sentiment and is credited with inspiring Brexit. I mean, obviously that's a over-editorialized way of putting it, right? Like, oh yeah, the reason the UK Brexited is because we let a country into the EU which was significantly below the economic standard. But bear in mind that the economic standard difference between East and West is, like that level. The economic standard gap between Ukraine and Germany is 5 times, 500%, which is going to cause all sorts of issues unless you impose all sorts of restrictions on EU membership, which make it not really full EU membership to begin with. So we've obviously got the fact that, like, okay, guaranteeing rule of law in a country you don't own, very hard. We've got the economic argument. We've probably also got all of the other barriers to, like, joining it. But the biggest one is the fact that joining the EU means you have to be on a fair footing regarding, human rights, regarding your market economy, which includes all sorts of weird things you don't think about, like intellectual property and transportation and energy and, like environmental policies and accounting and all the different things that you don't assume but are actually a part of it. And so if you look at another country trying to join the EU, one of my favorite examples is Serbia. Serbia has wanted to join the EU since a long time ago, but they officially applied in 2009 after seeing the countries around them. It's been going pretty well for them. And so despite applying in 2009 and going through non-stop negotiations since then, they are still ongoing. Serbia is expected to complete negotiations by 2024, allowing it to join the EU by 2025. 2025 is the next expansion of the EU, the first one since 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, it'd be easy to confirm this. In this video right here, the 2004 expansion of the EU, then there was the 2007, the 5th wave of EU enlargement, and then I'm guessing it's just Croatia after that. So what do we got? Western Balkan enlargements? Let's look at the graph instead. This is much more fun, right? 1957, 1973, 1981, 1986. Look at Greenland leaving there. 1990, 1992. Ooh, a new color because they got a flag and an anthem. 1995, Sweden joins. 2004, all of those people join. Romania, Bulgaria join. And then 2013 is when Croatia joined. 9 years ago. Oh, and then 2020, UK leaves, huh? How about that? Isn't that fun? Anyway, long story short here, you can see that, it's been 9 years since an expansion because it takes a really, really, really long time. In fact, if you look at, how it's actually been going down, ignoring the visa liberalization, which, fun fact, I've taken advantage of, I went to Serbia, didn't have to, go through any process, just showed them my passport, they're like, bueno, and into Serbia I went. And basically, my point here is just to say that, Serbia is going through the negotiation process. You can look at what that entails. It is very exhausting to even think about, fishery, you can't agree this stuff afterwards. You have to have a common policy on what taxation means. It's definitely the same level of taxes, but you're going to need to have a VAT. You're going to need to make contributions. You need to have statistics collecting data. That means that they can have EU-wide statistics, enterprise and industrial policy, judiciary and fundamental rights, science and research, external relations. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Financial control, My point here is just to say that, being a part of the same bloc that needs to be relatively standard to have a common market is very, very hard. And if it's taken Serbia 13 years to do it, how long will it take Ukraine given their situation? Even if you fast-track this process, it's a long process, so fast-tracking it just means making it take some years instead of some decades. And so, long story short, that's why it's so hard. It takes a really, really, really long time to join the EU. Should it take so long? I think the argument is probably yes, because when you look at, if you try to squeeze countries in as fast as you can, you have all sorts of issues, including the thing that inspired Brexit, according to this one post. Do you want to have other countries leaving? Well, if you get one country in and one country out, that's not really progress, is it? And speaking of progress, I wanted to talk about, obviously, the fact that having secure borders, because some people say, why does it matter if a country has its borders? Surely the EU can secure those. The problem being is that, actually one of the biggest crises that the EU faced in 2015 was the migrant crisis because they don't have their own secure external borders. All it takes is one border not being so secure, like that between perhaps, Greece and Turkey or Bulgaria and Turkey, and all of a sudden, wow, huge flows come in, all sorts of unrest happens, and now you've got to focus on, all of this stuff going on, rather than what you really want to be getting down to. And who knows what the EU wants to be getting down to, but they can't get down to that. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the other interesting thing here, because although Ukraine joining NATO and the EU are really fun concepts that are coming out of this, I think the most interesting thing about this whole situation is the big boost to publicity the EU, because again, the last big thing that happened to the EU was the migrant crisis, I would say. Like, I mean, things have happened since then, but this is still the stain, the scar on their history, the last big international thing they had to deal with. And did it go very well? Depends on what you consider as very well. The EU as a whole has really been not, it's not been having many big vehement defenders, and it's not been going too well until right now, where being an EU country, even though it mostly just lines up with being a NATO country, being a NATO country / being an EU country is one of the strongest protections you can have against maybe a very big neighbor. Lots of people have been saying for the last 20 years or so something along the lines of like, yeah, I mean, why does NATO need to exist? It's not like Russia's going to invade in the modern age, and then Russia in the modern age invaded. It's kind of crazy how that happened. And so the expansion of NATO, which has previously been pretty consistent, it was gonna maybe join a lot of Western Balkan countries in there, but this expansion of NATO has been, let's say, fast-tracked, because both Sweden and Finland, I've seen a lot of Swedish people and Finnish people just in my personal bubbles that I interact with, being like, yes, we would really, really, really like to join NATO all of a sudden. Even Sweden, who are traditionally neutral, have been sending arms to Ukraine. This is one of the craziest things. Literally Finland, for the first time, are starting to favor joining NATO. And the reason you might be saying, like, wait a minute, like, looking at the map, aren't Sweden and Finland the countries that would probably benefit most? Well, you might, again, logically assume that, but Sweden has been historically neutral, and Finland is historically neutral on matters of Russia and Europe. Like, worldwide, they have opinions that peace is good and lame stuff like that. But when it comes to the EU / Russia argument, they've always tried to play both sides a little bit, and the reason why is because the last time that they didn't, this kind of happened. They lost, the Winter War is one of the most amazing, successes of a country, 5 million people repelling a country the size of 100-something million people, but they did still lose Karelia and Salla, and again, the size of Finland today, were it not for this, would be significantly greater. In fact, Norway only borders Russia because of the loss of territory from this, and so Finland basically, to avoid being entirely invaded, had to stay somewhat on the neutral side. However, right now is the time to be joining NATO because Russia's way too busy trying to get their former territory back, and so Finland wants to join, and if Finland's joining, why doesn't Sweden get on board with that too? Although I'd actually make the argument that, once Finland has joined NATO, because already we have Norway in NATO, if Finland's in there, does Sweden really need it? It's like Austria, right? Austria's not even talking about NATO, because what's going to happen? Are they going to invade Ukraine, and then Hungary, or, Slovakia, and then us? I mean, these days it looks a tiny bit more likely, but, I feel like they've got their own protection kind of built in by being surrounded by NATO members, and so yeah, I feel like Sweden probably isn't necessarily going to join, and let's be honest, Finland, there's a chance that it falters after this, depending on how this goes, because the Western response to Russia, mostly dropping 1 trillion sanctions, here's the EU sanctions alone, dropping as many sanctions as they can, trying to economically damage Russia as much as possible without going to war. It seems like it's at least doing something, and that's where I want to bring this video to a close, because I've been thinking a lot about the situation, right? And my goal is always to work out why something is happening. People just like to say, Putin be evil, Ukraine be good. And you know what? If you go on Twitter, I do love the Ukraine Twitter account. It's like, they atted Russia saying that they're barbaric, right? I mean, what is this when, countries... The real war is happening on Twitter. They're asking that, Ukraine, the country, is asking for Bitcoin and Ethereum donations, right? We're in a very, very weird world where they're thanking their donors and stuff. In fact, can I show you something? But ignoring this meme, like Putin versus Zelensky or whatever, ignoring this, it's also just look at this right here. They're like, here's a man that's afraid that none of them will be left to reach them, and then they do the sign. What's it called? The Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld. I don't know what it is, but the meme music. I've never listened to the show, but everyone knows the meme music. What are you doing, Ukraine, editing these videos? I shouldn't you be fighting a war? Anyway, my point here is just to say that the PR side of things and the economic side of things are kind of showing that, actually, yeah, even though in the modern age you can invade your neighbor, maybe the consequences are too high. Although you could then obviously say that, like, well, I mean, what about the the Western invasion of protection of Bosnia or Kosovo or the whole of the Middle East? Maybe is a better example there, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. They did not go. Or Iran has been isolated for so long. And so, yeah, what we're going to see right now is what happens when you isolate a country on the world stage. Because here's the thing that sucks about it. Like, I know this is how economic sanctions have to work, because the goal is make the people want to remove their leader. But the people who are suffering for Russia's invasion are not the people who put Putin in charge. They're the innocent people just trying to go about their day-to-day life. And it's like, again, the lower class suffers for the crime of the uppers again. And this is true in Ukraine too, I'm sure. If you're a rich Ukrainian, you are out as fast as possible. You had easy access out there. But if you're not, if you have your house you have to stay with, you're staying in Kyiv while the craziest things are happening around you, while people are having to fire up Molotov cocktails to defend their neighborhoods. And it's like, yeah, sucks for everyone, right? Sucks for everyone. However, the final thing I wanted to say is I was thinking about this, like, okay, so it's easy to say Russia be bad, Ukraine be good. I was trying to think, like, what is the most justifiable equivalent where you'd say, yeah, I think it's good to invade the sovereign territory of a former country that used to be part of me that doesn't want to be part of me anymore. Because maybe the best example would be like, like I'm from the United Kingdom. We have a lot of former territories, right? They're happy doing their own thing. But then also in 1997, against our wants, we did it solely because we wanted to keep China happy. We gave away Hong Kong, right? And Hong Kong, how's that been going for them since? If it weren't China that we gave it to, if it were a middling power or a smaller country, would you want the UK to go in and bring freedom and freedom back? Because that's our Western value, right? The freedom and liberal democracy. Sad, we act like they're the norms and they're the things seen as universally good, but they're the things we see as universally good. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the levels of tolerance that one of the few great shared values we have, that, yeah, being able to choose your leaders and being able to have, basic freedoms is a good thing. But yeah, I think it's a great thing about us, but it's not the global standard. And if you did hate liberal democracy and you hated freedom, and you felt like maybe if people were disciplined a little more and taught what to do with the hammer and maybe a sickle as well, then maybe you think like, oh yeah, these Western imperialists sicken me. Thank God someone is going in there and bring it back to them. And yeah, is that a common opinion? I bet not. But it's something that's been on my mind. Wanted to share it. Thank you for watching. This has been a second channel video. If you want to give me money for no reason, my Patreon is linked down below. Won't improve the quality of these videos. I'm literally drinking out of a can of beans that I've taken the thing off right now. So you can see the money's gone to good use. But I hope you enjoy the video regardless, because I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye. I'm just kidding. Second channel, don't care. So how's the weather? It's pretty rainy where I'm at. I know, it's shocking. Raining in the UK, huh? I think that the thing that I'm actually hopeful for is just, I'd like the suffering to stop, right? I would like for everyone just to be like, can we go back to normal, guys? Wouldn't that, what do we do to make that happen? I feel like the whole, like, one of the sad things about war, and the reason it's like hard to be in favor of it, is like the way you retaliate for bad things happening to one place is you make bad things happen somewhere else. And it's like, is more suffering the solution to suffering? Sadly, it seems as though the common acceptance is yes. And we'll see how that goes, I guess. Side note, I want to know, sorry, I shouldn't do this here, but we're going to do it here anyway. If I wanted to know directions from Kiev to Moscow, what's it going to say? Is it going to warn me about first of all, it's 11 hours, 46 minutes. Is it going to let me know that I'm going to cross through a danger zone? Nope, it's just going to say that I've got to cross a border. Although there's a big closed road here. Is this really the most effective way to go from there to here? Why can't I use this off-ramp here? Is there an off-ramp there? Let's find out. So instead of taking it's interesting. I wonder why it doesn't recommend me take this. Road directions for Ukraine. Clearly something we should do after this all settles down. Also, is that Rome? Or am I? Oh no, that's Cyrillic. Homel, Cherniv, Bryansk. Fun places, huh? Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye.